Hello, everybody. Or as you guys would know at first, hold up. Hooty hoo. Hooty hoo. Yes, I decided to get an intro. Yes, and there will be, well, I guess I'll spoil it for you. An outro as well. How you do this, in case you guys don't know, I will turn this down. Turn this off in general. If you want to put music on that's not created by you or created by somebody who you know is not going to sue you. And again, this is for those of us who are not fortunate enough to have famous friends. I, which do not know any. I've met a few athletes in my day, but I do not know anybody musically talented enough that can make beats and good vocalage. Vocalage? Is that a word? I guess so. If it's not, so be it. It sounds good. Anyway, so what you need to do is you got to get royalty-free music. Sometimes you got to pay for it, where it's like you pay like $20 and then you just pay for the rights to be able to use the song, but you don't have to continue to keep paying for it. There's a site I got. I think it's called like Is it Epidemics? Something like that. I'll probably put it in the description if I remember. But it's pretty, it's a good little site where you just get royalty-free music or sounds. I had this stupid idea, which I'm not going to do it, but I'll play the sounds for the hell of it. But I had this dumb sound, couple sounds where I was going to kind of use it as like a transition to go into the interview part. And since I do vending machines, hold on. That was going to be to go into the interview. And then coming out of the interview, I was going to play. These are the dumb ideas that make no sense, but they made it sense for like a couple minutes. Because it's on the board. There's only 8 sounds on this board. I'll even play them. So and then you got the two songs. I don't want to play the outro until we get to that point. Boo! So we got that. We got clapping. Hooty hoo. Of course, we got hooty hoo. And that's in case I want to tell a joke. So I put them on the board, obviously, knowing that I was going to use them. Well, once I started to, I did like a little trial episode where I just wanted to see what it would sound like doing an intro and then hit those sounds and kind of transitioning to the episode or the interview. I was like, this is stupid. So, yeah. Before I completely ruin this episode by talking and not bringing it back to the most, a great interview that it became, as I did do the interview already, it's just I do the intro in front of it. I just don't want to play music and all that shit before they get on and do my hoodie, all that nonsense. I don't want to do it all then try to talk serious. I don't know. It's just weird to me. Just something in my head. Maybe I need to get over it. But yeah, so we got an intro now. We got an outro. I don't know if it's good. We'll figure it out. I kind of like it. I don't know why. I played with many different songs and so on. I didn't want any words. I kind of like the waves of the intro because it's kind of relaxing and it just kind of gets you into the beat. And so, I don't know. I enjoyed it. I hope you guys do as well. And we're just going to jump right into our interview. Thanks, guys. Okay, guys, we are back again. Like I said, I think I say all these things and repeat so many times because I don't know what to say when you find new people. And at least with this one, I got to know her a little bit and have a real conversation in the beginning. She seems like a nice person and seems like she's really doing some stuff out here. So, yeah, I met her off of Podmatch, which, again, I've said it sucks that there's not enough enough disabled people on there, but I check every so often. There's always new people. And she's relatively new to the site from what I gather. So you want to tell us, a little about yourself and your name and all that?
Yes, of course, Timothy. So my name is Marcia Moran, and I'm a stroke survivor. And I have been a stroke survivor for 7 years. I am proud of this because the object is that I survived rather than died that day.
Right. Is that a label that people say, like, is there a lot of people that won't admit that they're a stroke survivor? Because I mean, usually you don't hear. I mean, you hear it sometimes, but you said you're proud of it. So is that something that some people are afraid to tell people?
I'm not sure that they're afraid to tell people, but I think they're sometimes afraid to tell people they've had a stroke.
Right. Yeah. I think that's with everything. I interviewed a girl who said she was autistic, and she's very functional, but she said when she put it out to the world and came out and said that she was autistic, it was almost like she came out and said she was gay. Like, she told everybody she's
Really?
autistic, and everybody just treated her totally different. It was like she was slow, and even though they knew her for a long time, it was like, oh, you're autistic. It's like, yeah, but I'm functional, and it didn't matter. So
That sounds so weird to me.
it is, but again, you mean, I guess the average, when you hear autistic, you think of people who are slower mentality wise, and
Right.
it's
They just think differently.
yeah. Again, it's just what the first, if you don't, I mean, I've been around enough people to know the difference, but if you don't think, the first thing that kind of rolls off your tongue or the back of your mind when you hear autistic or whatever condition, you usually, like we were talking about off mic, the first thing you hear when you're like visually impaired or blind, you think of canes or dogs, things like that, even though there's plenty of people with visual impairment who don't have any of that. So
Right.
it's just the first thing you hear. So yeah, when people say you're autistic, it's like, oh, well, I don't know if you can work here now because you don't think, even though it makes no sense. So,
Yeah.
but that's why I wanted to ask, because I didn't know if that was a thing with the stroke community where it's like, are people really embarrassed to admit that they had a stroke or not?
Sometimes I think they are, yeah.
Yeah, that's some of the stuff we have to kind of cut out. I mean, it's not all our fault. It's not all other people's fault, but it's just. I have loved to watch recently this whole disabled Pride Month stuff where people are proud to have a disability. It's really beautiful because there's a lot of people that are really hiding in the shadows and are afraid to show what they look like and what they're about, and
Yep.
and that's people like you are going to help.
Yep.
So let's delve into like the beginning part. Like, why don't you talk about life before your stroke and what was life like for you?
So I was a small businesswoman, and I ran every other day. My husband and I brought my cat up to the lake every weekend, and I like to paint. I like to kayak. For me, it was just a normal life.
Yeah.
And then I had my stroke.
Do you remember everything?
I actually do. So it was Sunday morning, and I woke up, and I felt really odd. I thought, I'm just going to text my friend Rochelle to tell her I won't make breakfast. When I got done with the text, I could not read the screen. It was all gibberish, and I went, this is weird. So I'm going to just text her later. So I put the phone down, I rolled over, and bam, I got the worst headache imaginable. And despite the pain, I fell asleep. When I woke up the next time, I knew I was in real trouble because I was paralyzed on the right-hand side.
Wow. What's that realization like?
Panic.
Yeah.
It's like, so imagine if you wake up and you can't feel half your body.
Yeah.
What would you feel? Yeah.
Yeah, it's on a smaller level. Like, I could barely see out of my left eye. It's just like colors and motion. And, There's one day I woke up and, I mean, sometimes when you're just in a daze, you just kind of forget everything and, whatever. And so I woke up and I was just laying on my right side and I couldn't see out of my left side. And just for like a second, it's just this panic of like, oh shit, my other eye went too. And then it's like, oh, okay. So I got lucky there. But, it is amazing when just something is just not right.
Yeah. Well, I would be freaked out if I couldn't see.
Yeah,
I just would.
it's not all it's cracked up to be. It's not fun, but you
Yeah,
can manage.
yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, but go ahead. Yeah. So you couldn't feel the right side of your body. You're slowly panicking.
So yeah, slowly. Yeah, I was
Rapidly.
panicking really hard. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So I rolled out of bed and I dragged myself across the carpet till I got to the door, which was closed. And I reached up, and I don't know how many times I reached up because I was kind of stuck down on the floor, but I finally reached up high enough to grab the door and it swung open. And I took a break because I was so tired. And finally, I had enough gas to start dragging myself down the hall. And halfway down the hall, I couldn't move anymore. I thought, okay, well, at least my husband will come up for soda.
I was gonna say, are you home alone?
No, he was home. He was downstairs. I could hear the TV.
Okay.
And crash. And I don't know what fell, but something fell down, or it sounded like it fell down. And he came upstairs and he looked at me and said, Marcia, are you okay? And that's the time I realized I couldn't talk. So he said, Marcia, can you say anything? And I couldn't. So he dialed 911 and got the paramedics. And then he looked around the house to see if he could figure out what would happen to me. He couldn't. So he came back and sat by me. And when the paramedics arrived, one of them said, when did she have the stroke? And that was the first time my husband or I thought of the word stroke.
Right.
We didn't know what it was.
Right. I'm sure you kind of heard of what a stroke was, but you probably had your own like preconceived notions of what a stroke was, and it probably wasn't this.
Right. So I was only 53 years old.
Okay.
So I was thinking strokes happen to old people.
Right.
I know that's very bad.
No.
And so, yeah, it was a shock. I had normal cholesterol. I ran 3 or 4 times a week. I was 130 pounds. So I was normal,
Right.
but
Healthy.
I just had a stroke. So the paramedics got me ready. They put me in the ambulance. They told my husband to drive safely to the hospital. And I lost consciousness.
They wouldn't let
when
him
I
in the
awoke,
ambulance?
no, he had to drive.
Wow.
And they were communicating about which hospital to take me to. So we have one that's only 4 miles away from our house and one that's 10 miles away from our house. And they took me to the one that's 10 miles away because they actually excel at stroke recovery.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you I forget, did you say you were in Maryland, or you're in Maryland now?
I'm in Maryland now. We actually live in Virginia.
Okay, I was gonna wonder, because I was gonna say, because John Hopkins is in Baltimore, but
No.
okay. I was just thinking about hospitals. So yeah, you said, you said you passed out basically.
Yep.
Almost
Yep.
on the way there. Okay. I was going to ask you what your panic level was at that point, but if you're unconscious, I guess you can't panic.
Yeah.
So when did you finally come to?
So I came to, and I was dressed in a hospital gown. I had a needle in my arm, and my husband stood by my bed. So it's sometime during that Sunday, sometime in the afternoon or late afternoon. And I looked at him and I realized I felt okay and went back to sleep. The next time I woke up, it was still Sunday. There was a physical therapist there, and she said, "We're going to go for a walk now."
Okay.
I went, okay.
Uh-huh.
And she put a belt around my waist, She and my husband got me up, and she walked me around the nurse's station. And I'd say walked. So I had a little movement in my right leg. And it was like clomping, really. But I didn't fall down, mostly because she held me up. And I got back to my bed and I felt asleep immediately.
Now, was this an improvement from when you were like kind of dragging yourself to the door at your house, or was this the same amount of function in your leg?
Oh, it was better.
Okay.
It was definitely better. So I had no movement in my right hand side when I was at home.
Gotcha.
And when she got me up to walk, there was some movement in my right side. Not much, but some.
Oh, okay. Well, there's some improvement.
Yeah.
Okay, so what ended up happening next?
I stayed overnight in the ER because they couldn't find a bed for me, and they couldn't find a bed part of the next day. But one finally opened up, and they took me to my hospital room, and the nurse took me to my bathroom, and she got me settled down, and then she went out to do the bed. And obviously, I had a stroke, so I didn't have much movement on the right-hand side, so I fell off the toilet.
Okay.
And my husband realized at that point that I needed to have an advocate because there was a nurse in the room, but she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at things around the room, like making my bed.
Right.
And so, So he always made sure at that point that someone was always with me.
Yeah. Are you still with this man?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Because I didn't want to ask this next question and just sound stupid, but how does that feel now, even in hindsight or even back then, like what it's like to have someone who has like that unconditional love for you and who just like, because those are the kind of times you know someone cares about you when they're doing all these extra things, because I'm sure you saw the panic in his eyes as much as you saw it in your own. So what is it like to have that kind of support system where you, and I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure you had that realization of like, holy shit, like this is a time where someone could run and he didn't.
So I had it in my mind that he should run. And he said, of course I didn't run because, you know, I made a commitment to you for better, for worse. This was obviously worse, but also that's the first time I realized how much care people had about me. So it wasn't my husband only, although he loved me a lot,
right.
But it was my family. It was all these friends that came forward. I think I didn't know how much they cared about me until that point.
Yeah. Yeah. Unless you have this like really lovey-dovey family who's super affectionate or even friends, it's hard to, usually those are the times when kind of all their, you know, the boundaries and all the walls are broken down, and it's just like you have to show someone unconditional love because they're in such a bad spot.
Yeah. And he didn't show how distressed he was when he was in the hospital room.
Right.
He tried to leave that at the door.
Well, he has to be strong for you. I mean, they say that about a lot of people who are like in comas and who are just in really bad, maybe on death's door, where if somebody goes in the room, they'll say, please don't cry, don't be negative, just say nice things, talk about memories and all that, because they don't, even though this is not as bad as that, but you know, you don't want to stress the other person out, because if there is any chance they're going to come out of this coma or whatever they're in, you need to be as positive as possible.
Yeah. Well, actually, I had dysphagia, which means that I couldn't swallow, or I couldn't swallow well. So they gave me liquids.
Okay.
And I had to swallow looking forward. I had to take the drink looking forward. I had to swallow when I was looking to my left, and then I could look forward again.
Hmm.
And the cafe sent up a meal for me,
Mm-hmm.
and I started eating at one time, and I choked. Okay. And I don't know how they got it out, but they did. And that's the point where my husband really became afraid, because most people who have dysphagia can get pneumonia or they can die.
Right.
And they don't have this cough sensor. So he could watch me eat and die without having anything that he could do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's gotta be a very scary realization.
Yep.
How much information did you guys have at that point? Did you when you were starting to eat and then you started choking? How much did you guys know what you had and what had happened to you? Besides the fact that it was a stroke.
Well, that's about all we knew. So during my hospital stays, that's all I knew. Now, my husband learned more about it day by day, but in the beginning, he knew nothing as well. So we were clueless.
Right.
That's a pretty bad place to start.
Yeah. Well, you said that. I lost my train of thought. But you said you didn't really know, because you were healthy and all that. Like, did they ever tell you what actually caused the stroke, or is it's just a mystery?
So I had a carotid artery dissection, and 1% to 2% of stroke survivors have it. They don't know what caused it. So the simple answer, I had a stroke because I had a stroke.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough.
That's pretty scary.
Right.
Especially for, so if 1% to 2% of people have it, then 6,500 to 13,000 people have it every year.
Wow, okay.
And to me, that's a pretty large number.
Now, is there ways to detect that now ahead of time? Like, obviously you had one. So is there a way to, x-rays or whatever, to look inside your body and to know that this could happen again? Even not for you, but for anybody.
That's a good question. I don't know.
Not that I'm trying to panic you and think you're going to have another one, but it would be good to know how to detect one so you hopefully would never have to have another one.
Well, I came to the realization that if I have another one, I have another one, but I don't worry about it.
Right.
So I could spend a lot of time worrying about it, and it doesn't happen, or it does happen. But all that time thinking about it beforehand, it gets me nothing.
Well, that's a very good way of looking at it.
Yep.
I'm sure it probably took a while to get to that point, but
it does.
No, it's a very healthy way of looking at it, because just I think a lot of people would really stress about that, especially the unknownness of it, where it's just it came out of nowhere, and like you said, you're healthy and you're walking, you're doing all the things that you need to be doing, and I'm sure there'd probably be something you shouldn't have been eating or whatever, but in general, you were living a pretty healthy life and doing a good thing, doing good for yourself, and all of a sudden, disaster strikes out of nowhere.
Right.
Okay, so talk about, from that point on, like your, as far as getting out of the hospital, recovering, all that, after you, swallowed that meal, what happens next? Or tried to swallow
it. Yeah. So I was in the hospital until Thursday of that week. So
about 5 days.
Sunday to Thursday. Yeah. And then I went into rehab. So I was in a rehab hospital for 2 weeks. I was in home health care for 6 weeks. I had 2 weeks off, and then I had outpatient therapy for about 6 to 8 weeks. And then my insurance, I'm going to say, ran out. So that's all the therapy I was going to get.
Oof.
So I got speech therapy, occupational therapy, and physical therapy. And by the end of my recovery, I wasn't really all that recovered.
Right.
So I hired a physical therapist, and she worked with me for a year. And by the time we were done, you can look at me walking down the street and you'll never know that I had a stroke.
Wow. Well, what did the doctor tell you, like time frame and like, would you fully recover and all that? Because, I mean, I know you're going to get into eventually how you learned how to speak and all that again. And you did tell me off mic, but did he tell you that you would ever talk again? Did he ever tell you that your right side would come back? Like what was the doctor's like diagnosis and final thoughts on you?
So the interesting thing is they didn't say anything positive or negative.
Oh, okay. Neutral.
Yeah. So they did say I'd have most of my recovery in the first 6 months.
Okay.
And I'm going to say that anyone who has had a stroke or any other type of disability,
mm-hmm.
you can recover as long as you think you can.
Yeah, it's a mental game.
Right. And some of your recovery, okay, in the first 6 months, it is a lot longer curve, if you're thinking about a curve bar. But you can find a really interesting turn of events, and you will have a large increase in whatever it is you're doing sometimes by taking you don't laugh at me. I'm almost laughing at myself, but taking holistic view.
Okay.
So sometimes when you're looking outside the box, you actually find something that works.
Yeah. No, I understand the humor in it, but it's, to me, I've always looked at it like whatever gets you through the day, like whatever gets you through whatever you're going through, try it. Because sometimes the doctors aren't going to give you those type of theories, and you have to just kind of put anything together and hope it just works. So, like when I was in the hospital and I was sick and all that, and I was in so much pain, I didn't have skin, and there's a lot going on with me. One of the things that got me through it was I kind of and again, I was 4.5, but I still remember it pretty vividly, where I would just I had all my toys and my music and just whatever else, and like the Ninja Turtles and stuff like that. And I just like made this like invisible made up world around me. And even though I was in pain outside that little bubble, I somehow mentally kind of escaped it. Even though it was this like false world that I was in, it still got me through my pain. So I always say, like, whatever works, just go for it.
Yep. Exactly.
So yeah, I mean, and those are things you have to kind of figure out yourself. We live in the world of the internet where there's, you ask for a supplement that helps your hair grow, like you're going to get 1,000 things. So it's hard to find the actual things that you need to learn from what you're going through. But sometimes it's just trial and error. Just think of, do your research and all that. But sometimes you just kind of come up with it on the fly and you just try it, because if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But a lot of these trials are harmless. So just whatever works for you, just please keep going.
Yep.
So yeah, talk about your recovery as far as, your exercises and all that. What did you have to do?
So when I was out of the rehab hospital, I had a physical therapist come to the house for 6 weeks. And when you have home health care, you're not allowed to go outside of the house.
You mean like ever?
So, but ever, except you go to the doctors. They let you do that, but other than that, you can't go outside the house.
Is that like a trade-off to get your bill to be lower? How does that work?
I don't know.
that's a weird stipulation.
It's, yeah.
I believe you, but yeah,
so,
it's weird.
So think about it. Here I am. I'm not cooking. And for 6 weeks, we had to figure out, no, my husband can't cook. He doesn't really like to.
Okay.
he probably makes spaghetti and meatballs pretty well.
Right.
But how many times a day do you want spaghetti and meatballs, right?
Well, if you're Italian, you maybe a lot.
Maybe you do. So when the home health care was done, I could actually go outside, and I learned how to really walk when we were outside. So going outside for the first time, I had my husband with me, and he was holding my arm. And I had to think about how to move, like pick up your foot, move it forward, set it down. Pick up your foot, move it forward, set it down. And that's all I could think about. And I was looking down at the floor or at the ground. And it took a few weeks, but I finally learned how to walk that way without thinking.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, right. And then the next thing was, okay, you have to move your arm. So I spent a few weeks thinking forward, back, forward, back, forward, back. And then I didn't have to think about that so much. And then I had to think about, oh, go ahead.
No, it's just repetition. Like it's one of those things where it's an obvious function. You do it with your other foot, but now you've been stuck in this like rut. You've been doing it this way for so long, and you haven't had any real function in your leg. Because I say that because when I was in the hospital and before I got to leave, I was in the hospital bed for so long that I had like baby deer legs. So I couldn't really walk completely. So they had to get me on like exercise bikes and all that. But you really, and again, I was so young, so I don't remember all of it, but it is weird that kind of, you walked at one point and now you can't walk. And it's like, I just put my feet I just move my feet, right? Like I normally do, but you don't really realize what your brain does because it's like half the stuff is on autopilot. So you just do what you know. Like, your mind really is telling your feet to move, but you're just not physically actually thinking about it because your mind just, those parts are all connected now. Now everything, like the circuits are all plugged in, everything's there. But when those plugs get, when there's a malfunction or something gets unplugged, you got to redo it. And it's kind of like a computer. You got to reboot it all. And it may take a minute. And it's a weird thing to kind of learn how to do something that you've done before with ease, and now it's like, oh, I got to try this again. And then you also have another foot that you're doing it normally, but now you're not dragging or whatever, limping or whatever you were doing.
So it's a tripartite. So the muscles in the legs have a 3 movement when they're walking. Mm-hmm. And the muscles have been paralyzed at first, and then they have to figure out how they're going to move together. Right. And it takes them a long time to figure out that they are moving together. They're part of a system, and the system is broken.
Yeah.
Right.
During your therapy and exercising, were you getting discouraged some days when no nerve system, nothing was like getting any better, your nerves were just staying the same, and or was it a quick progress that did you start to see some improvement, like in the beginning anyway?
I would say in the beginning, well, first of all, I don't think I was depressed. So I was in the hospital bed, and I thought of, okay, on my first anniversary of the stroke, I want to run a 5K.
Okay, it's a big goal.
Yep.
Could you do that before the stroke?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Okay. The stroke does not make for good running.
All right.
So I had a goal, and I thought about what I needed to do to get to the goal. And clearly walking was the first thing. I didn't have negative thought about walking. I just kept thinking about, okay, what do I do to make myself walk a little better tomorrow? Okay. There are some days I didn't feel much like working out, but I did it anyway. Mm-hmm. So for the first days at home, I'd wake up, take a shower, go back to bed, get up, comb my hair, go back to bed, get up, brush my teeth. And that is, other than getting up and doing a few things, that was it for me.
Yeah. Could you do this all by yourself?
I'd like to say so.
Or were you not supposed to and you were doing it anyway? You were just stubborn and trying it.
That's the thing that I'm going to say, yeah. So I wasn't supposed to, like, take a shower by myself. And my husband did watch. I wasn't supposed to go to the bathroom by myself. And I think my husband took me in a few times, but I beat him off with my cane. So like, get out of here.
Right. We all need our privacy.
I got rid of my cane fairly quickly after returning home. Maybe more sooner than I should, but yeah. I didn't like the cane.
You seem to be like you were fairly certain that you were going to beat this.
I was. So by the end of my first year, I did not run a 5K. I wasn't ready to run a 5K. Right. So I said, that's fine. I'll run a 5K on my second anniversary. And I didn't get well enough to run my 5K then either. By the third anniversary, I finally realized I was different.
Okay. Yeah. That's got to be a little discouraging. Because the fact that you were doing it at all anyway was impressive. The fact that you even wanted to, but to accomplish it the way you wanted to, the fact that you couldn't, obviously was something that you could do previously. Yeah, that's got to be very frustrating.
Well, okay, so I was running. It was about the second anniversary, and I was running. And I was outside, and the sidewalk was, I'm going to say, crumpled a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I stepped on the crumpled part, and I wobbled but didn't fall. And I came down the second time, and then I did fall, and I dislocated my right elbow. And that's the point I decided I was done running. So here's the interesting thing. I called my husband. He was home. I asked him if he'd take me to the hospital. He said, yes, of course. They took me to the hospital, and they put me on morphine so they could relocate my elbow. And the interesting thing about that is that when I was on morphine, I could speak clearly. So that's important because I had aphasia, and aphasia is a language disorder. So when people talked to me, I understood what they were saying, and sometimes I could say nothing back. Sometimes I could say something back, but it wasn't exactly what I had in my mind that I could say. I could say a few words.
Right.
But when I was on morphine, I could speak clearly, and I was really proud.
Huh.
And then when I went off morphine, I was back to having aphasia.
So you have an addiction.
Well, I was told by my husband that I couldn't have any more morphine.
Right. Oh, yeah, it's not good for you. So that's what I was wondering.
Right. Yeah.
But because I was wondering how that changed. Because how were you really, conversating with people? Were you writing stuff on paper, or could you get a couple words out so everyone knew what you were saying, or what?
So I could speak sometimes. So if you said something to me, I know exactly what I wanted to say, but I couldn't say it. So I'd think about smaller words that I could maybe say.
Right.
And that's how I communicated. And by August of 2015, I got okay at speaking. I didn't realize, though, that the okay at speaking was just the conversational stuff. If I had to speak at a much deeper level, like for a job or interview or anything, I would clam up because I couldn't say those more complex things. So, or sometimes my husband would say something and I couldn't speak, and I thought, it's not this important. I just won't bother saying anything. The difficult thing about that is every time that you choose not to say something, or every time you have aphasia and you can't say something,
mm-hmm.
a little piece of you goes away.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's got to be so frustrating to want to speak and you can't. I'm sure now you probably use every chance you can to just talk someone's head off. That's because you were silenced for so long. Which, how long did that go on for?
So my aphasia went on for 3.5 years.
Wow.
And yeah, exactly. So I was looking for something that would make my aphasia better or go away. And I found 2 therapies that I did. The first therapy was laser therapy, and it's on my, so a chiropractor did it on my head where I had my stroke. And the laser was an zirconia laser, and it got better little by little by little. And then it stopped getting better. So I'd say it got me 40% to 50% better, but I still had aphasia. The next thing I tried was neurofeedback. And the neurofeedback happened at 3.5 years after my stroke. And my doctor had just started doing it, and he was having great results. And so he stopped me one day and he said, Marcia, I think you need to look at this. It's this website. Go take a look and see if you want it, because I think it would really do you some good. And I went, okay, well, what is neurofeedback? So I went home, I looked it up on the site, and it was amazing. They said that 85% of traumatic brain injury survivors who used neurofeedback of this type got better. And I went, holy cow. If there is a chance of me to get better, I'm going to try it, right?
Right, yeah.
So I went in and said, let's go for it. And so it's about the size of a large smartphone, maybe a little thicker. And there are 5 leads that come out of it. And he puts what I like to call cat spit in my hair. So it's wet and sticky and really icky.
Okay.
And it creates a linkage between your scalp and the electrode, right? And it's connected to his computer, and he turned it on and started out, and I felt nothing. I went, okay, this is interesting. I don't feel anything. But I could see my brainwaves going across his computer monitor. That day, I noticed I could speak a little bit better.
Wow, that fast.
I had 6. It's that fast. Well, he said it would be 1 to 3 sessions before he knew if it did anything. So it was that day that I spoke better. I had 16 sessions, and it brought my 2 minds together. The things that somebody said something to me, I had a thought in my mind, I couldn't say it. Well, now I could say it. It's like perfect. I could say it perfectly after 16 sessions. Just think about that. So I had speech therapy for 4 or 5 people did speech therapy for me over time. If I'd had this somewhere in between my speech therapist, I might have not had speech therapy. I mean, speech therapy is important. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
I think everybody needs some type of speech therapy, right? But maybe if I'd had it sooner, I wouldn't have needed all the speech therapy.
Yeah, possibly.
Right. There's no knowing, but I am so glad that I was treated by this doctor.
Yeah, of course. That's, I mean, life-changing. There's no way around it.
Exactly.
I mean, you went through 3.5 years like that where you're just borderline silent, where you can only get a couple words out. And, you know, as you were telling me off mic about, well, I mean, you can say it, but what was your, I mean, one of the first things you said about what you were doing previously before the stroke was working. What was your mindset during those 3.5 years?
Oh, I thought I'd get a job, right? Because obviously I couldn't work anymore or work for myself anymore. So at a year and a half after the stroke, I sent out my resume. I got a couple companies interested in interviewing me. They called me up. We introduced ourselves. They asked the first questions, and I went, there was nothing coming out. The first interview, like nothing. The second interview went a little better, but nobody's going to hire somebody they can't talk to.
Right. What kind of jobs are you trying to get?
So one job was writing business plans, which I'd done before. And I actually really liked it. So in the early 90s, I worked for a guy who did 36 business plans. And of those 36, 2 were unfunded. So he had a really good record, or we had a really good record. And that's one of the jobs that I applied for.
Now, do you think you could have done this job if you could have gotten past the interview?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
Well, my typing was really slow too at that point.
Oh, right.
So maybe I could have thought it. Maybe I could have put it out on the screen, but I would have been a lot slower than I used to be.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like I said, I'm sure. Yeah, that's the thing. You seem like you were a very hopeful person, but realizations have to set in, especially with a lot of rejection. Right. And I mean, you see that a lot with people with disabilities, where you'll talk to, especially the ones that aren't working. Some of them don't even want to get out there and even try because of the embarrassment and because of the awkward situations that they get put in. And I remember when I was job searching at one point, and it was a lot of embarrassing and just, at least at the time, but there was a lot of moments where it's just, I got put in situations I didn't want to be in, and you got to try to be cordial and, yuck it up with them, try to be as nice as you can so you get a job. But there's many moments where you just want to unleash because you're just tired of all the discrimination and all the things that come with it. But and then there's the realization that kicks in of you yourself, like, oh, I just can't do this. Whether it's accurate or not, that's where the mind ends up going, because, especially when you get told no multiple times or rejected, or just, oh, we'll call you later, we'll call you, someday. It's not going to happen because, well, in your case, you can't talk.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it's got to be very frustrating.
So it just told me that I needed to look in other places. So I needed to learn how to talk first, and then I could find a job. Well, I did learn to talk, but now I didn't want to work for anyone.
Right. Yeah. There's that part.
Yeah,
Sleeping in is nice.
yeah.
One thing we did kind of skip over. What is your function in your right side of your body now? Like as far as movement.
So, so from a movement perspective, I'm 100%.
Wow, that's awesome.
From a how it feels, I'm about 95%. So I still have pain in my um, hip, my knee, and my ankle, but it's minimal by this time.
Yeah, but that's like uh, you got to take what you get, and if you're talking about
Right.
95 and 100 of those two percentages, that's pretty damn good. 5%
Yeah.
of achy
So,
is something you can live with. I'm assuming.
yeah. Yeah. So if I could just get somebody to figure out how to get rid of the cramping in my right foot, I would be happy because my foot cramps all day, every day.
Oh, okay. Can you do
You
like
know,
CBD or some sort of pain management type of whatever supplements? Or I mean, there's so many things out there. Have you tried stuff like that?
I would like to just try something that gets rid of it. I've heard about dry needling, but I haven't tried it because I heard about it after COVID started.
Okay.
Um, but I think after COVID is more or less, I'm not going to say gone because it's never going away,
Doesn't seem like it.
but right. But once it's less, I'll probably try dry needling. And I don't know, but I have no idea whether or not it will work, but it sounds interesting.
Yeah, but you didn't know if that procedure would work on you for speaking either. So
Exactly.
not to say it would be that effective because it's hard to beat that, but you never know.
Right. You never know.
You never know. So what are you doing with your time these days? You know, now you're 7 years later and you can speak again. Your body is back to normal for the most part. What do you do now?
So I wrote a book that came out in August of 2019. It's called Stroke Forward, and it's all about how I came back from my own stroke. And that includes the neurofeedback, because I think a lot of people aren't aware that neurofeedback exists. And I think I want to let them know it does, right? I just started recording it as an audiobook, and I hope to have that out this year. And I just started coaching. So, and I'm focusing on stroke and stroke caregivers,
Mm.
because I think that is a group of people that is underserved and they have unique challenges. And I know because I've been there.
Yeah. Well, you hear a lot of nightmarish stories when it comes to caregivers. I mean, there's so many great ones, and they're underpaid, and they do so much for people. And it's sad that you hear all these bad stories. Um,
Yep.
and maybe it's just more resources and money needs to go to these people because, you know, when it comes to another adult having to take care of another adult, whether it's bathing them, you know, taking them to the bathroom, teaching them how to walk, any of these things, it's not only is it time consuming and strenuous on the body, and, you know, it takes a lot of love and care.
Yep.
Like you have to genuinely want to help people to do that job. And of course, there's a lot of
Yep.
people that do it just to do it because there's a job opening. But um,
Right.
I'm sure there's a lot of good ones out there that really, like in your case, just helped and rehabilitate
Yep.
humans.
Yep.
Is that you were talking about your coaching? Is that a part of this, or is that just something you're passionate about?
So when I had my stroke, the way I thought about life changed. Before my stroke, I was a workaholic.
Mm.
After my stroke, family comes first, friends come first, my friends come first. And of course, work is important, but it's not as important. I see this as more of a community. And I look around at the stroke survivors, and this is a community that needs help, needs more help than is given to it. So I hope that because I've had a stroke and how I know how it's been for me, I hope I can help people get better.
Yeah. Yeah, I've said this so many times. Like, there's something to the people that are perceived to be the broken people are the ones that are always trying to help fix people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, we're always the ones that, whether it's people like us, I mean, obviously that's usually where we go to first. People that are like us, we want to make sure that they're okay, because it's like, look, I get it. I know where you're at, and I've been there. But then it's like anybody in our lives, it's friends and whoever, and we're just good people to have around because we've been through shit and we've seen the worst and what life can throw at you. And, you know, there's something to it where it's just, we're always the ones that want to help people. And again, there's plenty of people who want to help people who don't have disabilities, but still it's a trait that a lot of people with disabilities can tap into. And it's not something you just develop overnight. Like, you're either kind or you're not. Not everybody has that. That's awesome that you want to do that. So one of the things I like to do towards the end is, you know, there's plenty of people that are going through similar situations that you've been through. Whether it's currently or, you know, usually I like to talk to the people that are dealing with it right now, because those are the people that are most, you know, the most as far as suffering wise. Do you have any like advice, just kind of how you got through it? Like, do you have any advice to how to just kind of, you know, as you said, it's a mental thing. So, how to kind of keep them moving and not just kind of be susceptible to, you know, the mental game and the you know, the dark side of it.
Yes. So stroke survivors must never give up. Everything. So it's like you have this forest in front of you and you're working through it for the first time. You chop your way through it. Okay. If you decide not to go through it again, then what's your point? So you have to chop through that forest every single day. And eventually you gain, and it's called neuroplasticity, you gain these symptoms or pathways through your brain. And all of a sudden you realize that you can finally do something again. So I could snap my fingers. And this was months after the stroke. I was so proud I could snap my fingers. Now it's nothing. But I was so proud. So don't give up. No matter what it is you're trying, no matter how it doesn't feel like you're never going to get there, keep going at it every single day. Mm-hmm. For caregivers, you have to take care of yourself. You have to eat right. You have to exercise right. You have to go out and have some time alone. Because if you don't take care of yourself, you'll get worn out and you'll not take care of your stroke patient either.
Yeah.
And by the way, thank you so much for everything that you do for stroke survivors.
Yeah, they definitely need to hear that. I'm sure there's plenty of days that the job is tough and they don't want to do it, and maybe they look at their pay and go, why am I doing this? Even though they're doing it for a good reason. It's just sometimes our mind wanders off the path, and, you know, everybody needs to hear that they're doing good when they aren't doing good. You know, that's kind of how we're built. That's just human nature. It's just good to know that we're doing something. Sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's plenty of, you know, no matter how much good you're doing, sometimes it's, you hit a dry spot in your life, and you know, it's just kind of, even like I've said this even with the podcast, there's many times where I'm just like, oh, I know I'm doing good, but what's the point? No one's going to, you know, the people in the community aren't even really supporting it the way they should. and then you get a random email saying, "Hey, man, like, thank you, like, this helped me," and it's like, okay, that's what I needed, and I shouldn't need that, but it just vindicates what I'm doing, and I just know that I'm on the right path, because sometimes you're on a path and you're not, especially if it's like a familiar path and you haven't seen anything that's familiar to you. You're like, shit, am I lost? And then something brings you back. You see a landmark. It's the same thing.
Right.
It's just like someone says you're doing something good. It's like, okay, I'm right where I need to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Just my last question. As you were saying, like, have you been able to, like, now take time to realize, like, how much you've actually been through and what you've overcome and accomplished? Like, is that all settled in yet?
So my book had been written and had sat on my shelf for a year before I actually realized I had done a book. I think that it's really impressive that somebody who had aphasia is reading their book to have an audiobook made. Think about it. I had aphasia, and 40% of stroke survivors have aphasia, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can now speak well enough to where I can make my book available on an audiobook. I think that's really important.
Yeah. Yeah, that kind of speaks volumes, and no pun intended, but it kind of almost it kind of defines the whole journey right there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, there's so much more you can say, but the fact that you can do an audiobook for people who can't talk, and you were one of them,
right.
And now you can speak.
Right.
Because of course, there's the typical cheesy, like, oh, you got to use your voice for good. Well, in this case, it's very literal. Like, you're using your voice for good, and more than just the words that are coming out. It's just the fact that words are coming out at all. It's just inspiring to those people who are struggling with it. And there's a lot of people that probably don't know about that procedure you had. And it's like, one person may hear it and go, wow, this is possible.
It is possible, and they should know about it. Now, it doesn't work for everyone. So 85% of traumatic brain injury survivors are better. Now, stroke is different, but I think it's close enough to say it's probably good for stroke survivors as well. So people who can get microcurrent neurofeedback should at least try it. It might do nothing. It might do everything. The only way you know is if you give it a try.
Yeah. Does that fall under like a traumatic brain injury?
So traumatic brain injury is a strike from the outside in.
Right, I know that, right.
So a stroke happens from the inside.
Okay, right.
So it is a little bit different, but I think if you look at what the results are, they're close enough to where I think you can probably say that it will help a person who deals with a stroke, or at least aphasia.
And that's probably where they started. They're like, I'm sure that's probably what it was originally used for people with traumatic brain injuries. And then it's like, well, it's still a brain. It's something to do with the brain, and it's just kind of the opposite in a way. But yeah, there's still parallels there. So I'm sure that's kind of.
So it's interesting. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
So the neurofeedback is really interesting in all the things that it does.
Mm-hmm.
So ADHD, autism, it does a whole lot of things. So anybody who's interested should probably go look and see if it would do them some good. PTSD. Yeah, PTSD. So That's one of the things that my doctor told me probably would get better is I had PTSD, and it it did. It made me better.
Yeah, I mean, it's good that you kind of was persistent and you continue to stay on the journey because there's a lot of, I mean, I've had a lot of surgeries that didn't really do much, and there's a lot of, locked doors, or, you turn them and they don't open. So there's a lot of rejection and frustration where it makes you not want to get up for the next one, where it's like you hear something, it's like, well, there's this procedure coming out, and you're like, yeah, what's the point? It's not going to work. So it's good that you stayed persistent and positive about it, even if you were a little leery and wondering and probably were even considering like it probably won't work. But the fact that you still tried it anyway, knowing that there was a chance that you'll get rejected and told that this didn't work, that's probably what got you to where you are today.
Yeah. Well, you have to be concerned about how life will go in the future. So I'm 25% more likely to get Alzheimer's because I've had a brain injury.
Oh, interesting.
So again, you have to look at what things out there will make me less likely to have Alzheimer's. And so those are some things I'm looking at now.
Yeah. No, it's very smart. Stay ahead of it as much as you can. That's one of the things that we don't know how fragile the body really is until something goes haywire, especially in your case. Something goes haywire out of nowhere. Don't really know exactly the full nature of it and how it happened. But all you know is something went wrong in your body, and here we are now. And I'm sure you're well aware of it. You're not opposed to a second time. Not necessarily has to be the same thing, but something else.
Right.
There is no such thing as, you can't be disabled times 2. So like you can, or 3 or 4 or 5. Like there's so many ways of, freak accidents and all that. But we're just talking about the body just losing its shit and doing something unfamiliar and just going crazy for no reason. And it's amazing.
And I think most people spend their lives not thinking about disability until it happens to them. And the thing is, it happens to everybody at some point.
Yeah. That's one of the things I stress is that I think maybe sometimes people are afraid of us because we are a reminder of how quickly you can become us. You're one car accident away from being paralyzed, or, your mom always tells you, or your dad tells you, don't run with scissors. Well, there's a reason, because they don't want you to poke your eyes out. And that is a literal thing that can happen to you. Obviously, it's hard for that to happen, but it can happen. Or sharp objects in general. But, it's not hard for someone to become disabled. Yes, in your case, something crazy happened, unforeseen. But there's obvious ways of becoming paralyzed. And unfortunately, a lot of people have been susceptible to that. But, like I said, you just can't be completely ignorant to what can happen to you. And that's why people just... that's why there's so many people speaking up about even just good dieting and exercise and just being aware of, just staying out of trouble. There's so many ways to kind of avoid certain instances. So, again, like I said, you can't prevent everything, but you got to prevent some. There's some obvious ones. And, this whole being disabled thing, it isn't fun. But we make the best of it, and there's a lot of us that thrive and survive with it. It's not, at least not for most of us. Not everything is a death sentence. Not everything is your life is over. And again, some people have worse conditions, and people are paralyzed from the neck down. And there's people that are really struggling. And, we're 2 people that are fortunate of being able to, speak, even see some, walk, talk. We can do a lot of... there's a lot of movements that we have. There's people that are really struggling, and, especially, you got the people who have a lot of the mental conditions that are really, really struggling. But it is, what it is. And you got to try to overcome how you can. You're dealt the cards you're dealt, and you can take that up with whoever you want, your God, your whatever, your parents, or, your genetics and all that. Do whatever you want. But at the end of the day, you still got to get up and try to live your life. And, I think it's very powerful of all the people that actually are just dealing with so much and they just keep going. Like,
Yep.
Even though I'm one of those people, I'm just in all of those people. Like, I never look at myself like that. I probably should, but there's people that are going through so much worse, and I just go like, I don't know how you do it, but please keep doing it because it keeps me going.
Yep. I know I went to a seminar, and there was a woman up there who had a brain, trying to think, was it a brain tumor? And she was talking about how terrible it was. And looking at the slides and everything that she went through, I said, I think I would have given up. Totally would have given up. Yeah. She got more than I can ever think about having.
Yeah, that's the thing. No matter how hellacious your or my story is, like, you can combine our stories together, and it's horrific. But there's people that have been through worse, and there's people that just every day a shitstorm is thrown their way. It's something after another. I don't pray, but I really just hope nothing but the best for those people, because it's like, I don't know how they even want to get out of bed or even want to do anything. And, like I said, I'm very grateful that I can sit here on my couch and talk into a microphone. And those are two functions that some people cannot do. And so I try to be great. I've worked with blind people. I know I have friends that are blind, and I'm happy that I have a little bit of sight. It's not great. Most people who have perfect sight would hate themselves tomorrow if their eyes woke up like mine. But I know what it's like to be around blind people, and I go, I'm very grateful that I have any. Even though the days where I wish I could drive and all that, it is what it is. I have my moments. I get over them quickly, and I just go, be happy you can see something. But yes, I thank you for doing this. You're a very inspiring woman. I'm very grateful to have you on, and I thoroughly enjoyed your story. And I'm happy that you've been able to overcome all this. And like I said, you're a very powerful woman, and I'm sure this will help some people.
So thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Of course. And like I said to you off mic, I really hope we can keep in touch. Anytime you need anybody to talk to, please. If you just want to show off your talking skills, you can yell at me anytime you want.
I love it. Thank you so much.
All right, we'll talk soon.
Okay.
All right. Bye. All right, guys. Yeah, that was really fun. I really enjoyed her, and I really like to dig deep into what someone's going through and kind of reenact that time frame. And I know sometimes it's hard for those people to do that, but she was so thorough, and that's what I loved about it. Like, it really, my imagination wanders all the time, and I really like to kind of put myself in her shoes, because I want to, I'll never know what it's like to be that, or I hope not anyway. But it's good to try to imagine what it's like. And hopefully the listeners can pick up on it as well, because, it's, you don't want to be like us. I mean, there's certain qualities that we have that are amazing, but you don't want to be disabled. It's not fun. These stories aren't to make it show you that our lives are fun. It's just to make it show you how much we overcome and how much we can do so much with so little. And just how amazing people with disabilities really are. And we're not sought after. People don't, we're not really represented in so many different ways, but that's what I'm trying to change as much as I can in my little area here, my little space. My co-host, Mr. Bullet. I'm sure you heard him there. He's in the window. He was cuddled up next to me, looking all adorable. He didn't have much to say. He said I did a good job, so I'm going to take his word on it. As you guys hear, I trying a little intro, outro thing. Oh, well, I spoiled it. There will be an outro. Yeah. And everything mentally, I've been kind of a little wiry. I've been a little moody here and there, PMSing a little bit. Sorry, ladies. No, I've been a little, once in a while, but I'm definitely in a better place than I was, which is a huge plus because I hate being in a dark space. Ooh, boy. Not fun. I shouldn't even make light of it because there's a lot of people going through it. I'm more making light of my pain because that's what I do. But for those who are battling it, please continue to fight and lean into those of us who can help you get through it. People who have experience with it, or people who are just love you and care about you. Please lean into that. I am just trying to be the best person I can be. And, yeah, we got an outro song, bitches. So I hope everybody has a good day, good weekend, and I will see you guys on next week. Bye.